What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 555 of #AskGSM here today for July 17th, 2024, or what I like to call CM Punk Day, aka the 13-year anniversary of the WWE Money in the Bank 2011 pay-per-view. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. Having a great week so far. Crazy to think, and I said this a lot, crazy to think it's been that long since that show. 13 years ago. Still, and people still ask me, what's your favorite match of all time? What's your favorite pay-per-view of all time? PLE, whatever. And I'm still hard-pressed to say anything but that show and anything but that match between Punk and Cena and Money in the Bank 2011. I know we just had Money in the Bank, both Cena and Punk returning on that show. They were both talking about each other in that press conference. Really cool to see. As someone who grew up, I mean, that wasn't like my first year as a fan. That was my third year of wrestling fandom, and I still think a lot of matches have come close, and there are a lot of matches that I hold very dear to my heart, Bayley and Sasha being one of them, because I was there for that one at TakeOver Brooklyn 9 years ago. Again, it's been that long. That's crazy. Also crazy to think that we've done 555 episodes of this show. Wild. Thank you guys for your support. We just celebrated, I think, 11 years of the show. Last week, I forgot to mention that last week here on the show. I think the anniversary exactly was last Monday, because we have the same calendar in 2024 as we did in 2013. And the first ever edition, I believe, I did of hashtag was Monday, July 8th, if I'm not mistaken. So that's pretty crazy. Thank you guys for your awesome support. I appreciate it. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. One quick thing before we get going here. I do want to mention this. I was looking into it yesterday, when I can find the time, which is almost never, but hopefully at some point either today or tomorrow or this weekend or whenever. What I'm thinking of doing, and nothing will really change, I mean, things will change, but like for the better, but not as far as like, you'll be still seeing the same content even if you don't sign up for this. But what I'm thinking about doing finally, because I've never really been super big on like Patreons and stuff like that, I just don't really like the idea of doing it. And for other people, that's fine. Just for me personally, I don't love that. But we've built up such a great base here on YouTube in the last 15 years I've been doing the channel. I think it would be cool if, because we already do content pretty much every single day, but I would love to do more. And I've always batted around the idea of doing, retro reviews, which we were doing here on the channel for many, many years. Anyone that's been checking out the channel for any extended period of time and following whatever, knows of my WrestleRant series, where we broke down every pay-per-view that I watched on the WWE Network, and I still get people leaving comments on those videos from like a decade ago. We started it a decade ago, and it wrapped up in early 2017. It was like a 3-year journey of watching every WWE pay-per-view on the network, and I haven't gone back and done it since then. I just don't have the time, because I was still doing like even the newer pay-per-views a year later. I haven't really broken down any of the shows in the last 5 years, aside from one here and there, but that's really about it. Maybe at some point we can start doing that again. But what I was thinking was, as opposed to doing it as a thing here on the regular channel, because we're not currently doing it, what I'm thinking of doing is doing a membership program here on the channel. So you probably have seen other channels do it, where you could just sign up. It would probably be $5 a month. And again, if that's too much, or if you don't want to do it, feel free. But even if one person wants to sign up and check it out, what I'm thinking of doing, as far as including like perks and stuff like that, that would probably be the biggest perk, would be exclusive videos that do not become available here on the channel at all. But they would probably include early access to videos, including hashtag AskGSM. I would put it up early for members. You could check it out, even if it's a couple hours early here on the channel before it goes up for everyone else. You could do that. So you'll get early access to probably most, if not all videos. Some videos I might just put up when I put them up, but I think most videos will probably do early access. And again, not a day early, but like hours earlier. So if you're like me and you want to get them as soon as they come out, I might do early access. This won't affect anything on the main channel, like I said. So it's not like the video's hashtag is going to start coming out on Thursday. But if you want to get early access, you can check it out on Wednesday. That's not necessarily the case. It would probably just be a matter of hours thing, maybe a days thing, probably hours thing. But early access, you get your own little badge in the comments. I would be able to respond to your comments quicker if you have the badge. and I respond to all your comments anyway for the most, but not all comments, but I try to get to what I can. But you get kind of first look at that sort of stuff. Not really first look, but like priority with that sort of stuff as far as comments go, the community tab, stuff like that. But we might utilize the community tab if you're a member, and if you sign up, you can ask me to review whatever, even if it's a show or whatever that I've already broken down before. So like I said, I've reviewed every pay-per-view, every WWE pay-per-view on the network from 1985 through 2017, I think. But even if it's a newer show or an older show, again, you can ask me, hey, go review this show, go review this match, go review this promo, and I will do an entire video about it. It would probably be a video. We might do exclusive shorts for people, but I can do recommended reviews for whatever you guys want me to review, and do a WrestleRant retro podcast for members only, as well as probably just like miscellaneous shit, like me talking about movies I just saw. That stuff that we don't really have time for on the main channel. We kind of did a Marvel podcast for a while. I just didn't have the time for it, but that's something that people want to hear, my thoughts on the Boyz that I've been watching all season, or The Acolyte, or Twisters coming out, or Deadpool 3, whatever it might be. You can ask me about it. We can have a chat about it. We can do a podcast about it for members only. So again, it would not affect anything on the main channel. I do want to make that very clear. I hate when people make things free initially, and then it's like, all right, if you want to still watch them, you got to start paying for it. I don't really like that because we've never done that before. I don't feel comfortable doing it. But if we are going to do it, it would be for like extra perks. I do want to make it worthwhile if you were to sign up, again, for probably $4.99 a month. Give you exclusive videos, early access, your own little badge in the comments, and I can, we can have a little discourse in the community tab with whatever you guys want to talk about, my exclusive thoughts and this or that, even if it's a Raw review. Like a lot of the times we review Raw on WrestleRant Radio. Like I review SmackDown here on the channel. That would not change. But if you want my thoughts on Raw from Monday night before I talk about it on WrestleRant Radio, I might even start doing that. I might do my own exclusive Raw review here on the channel and put it up for members only. So it really would be just extra content that we're not already doing on the main channel that you could sign up for. So again, I apologize for rambling, but I do want to throw that out there. That is something I am strongly considering. I got to work out the perks and stuff like that, but that's the general idea of what it would be. And it might be starting today. It might be starting on, tomorrow, Friday. I'm not exactly sure yet, but something to keep an eye out for. And also, we would include early access to archive content as well. Most likely, like old interviews that are not up here in the channel that have not been posted yet. You could get early access to those interviews, or I don't think I would ever put interviews on there and then not make them available for everyone else. But again, just for a small fee, and I get it, there's a lot of streaming services out there that you probably pay for. I know I do. But if you want to support the channel even the slightest amount, even if it's just to give it a dry run for a month and check out the content that I might be doing on over there. So just want to give you guys a heads up on that, and it might be coming soon here to the channel, very, very soon at that. So now let's talk about what you guys came here to hear me talk about, that being your question. So Micah does it from YouTube. Their first question was, do you own any WWE action figures of current or past superstars, and which one is your favorite? That's a good question. When I first got into wrestling 16 years ago, I wasn't a big action figure guy. I was already playing with action figures on my own through like elementary school and early middle school and stuff like that. But I wasn't really, I was never really a wrestling action figure guy as far as playing with the action figures. I think by the time that I got into WWE, I was already too old for that. So my younger brother, who at that point was 8 or 9, I don't remember exactly, but 8, 9, 10, he was around the age where he was playing with action figures still. So when I would buy like the Jakks Pacific belts, and I could do a whole fucking video on that, but when I would buy the Jakks Pacific belts at Toys R Us, he would get action figures, and he collected a lot of action figures. Like John Cena was one of the first ones he had, Triple H, Ted DiBiase Jr., this was like 08, 09, CM Punk with the longer hair. So we collected a lot of those. He got one of those Raw rings for his birthday, the first year that we were wrestling fans, and he used that for probably a good 2 years, and then he obviously grew out of it, as I would eventually do with all the other stuff. When you get older, that just kind of happens. The ring kind of fell apart in the various places, like in all the times that we had to move, it broke down a lot. But we kept the action figures. So also around this time, and he was already done playing with the action figures at this point, but we weren't going to turn down this offer. one of my other brother's friends was, a wrestling fan growing up. They're like the Attitude Era. Like he's my older brother, so this guy was older. He was trying to get rid of his action figures. Didn't sell it to us, he just gave it to us. A whole fucking bin of old action figures. And I think I ended up taking them. My dad held on to them for a while. I think I had them. I don't remember. But he gave us a whole bunch from like the Attitude Era. So actually, when I was going through some old shit about 6 months ago, we still had a lot of those action figures, and I still had them in my possession. So I was going through them, and some of them were broken. Like I found a JBL one, John Cena without a fucking arm. So I brought them to a local wrestling consignment shop here in Connecticut, and they took them. I mean, not even just for free. They wanted to buy them, so they gave me like $10 for them or whatever, $10, $15, which I think paid for my fucking Chick-fil-A that day or whatever it was. So, I got rid of the ones I didn't really have any sentimental value to. My brother would never fucking miss, and no one would really even notice they were gone. But I did hold on to a few that were from that time period, like the CM Punk long-haired one. I think I got rid of the Del Rio one. He had that one from many years ago. Like, I still have a Wade Barrett one from 2010, 2011 that I think I got as a gift with the Intercontinental Championship, the old Intercontinental Championship. And, so I still have a few of them. On, like, my desk area, I have actually a bunch of them. I started collecting more in the last probably 5-6 years, not to, like, use or anything, but just to leave on display. I probably have more than what I have out right now. The Ultimate Warrior one that I have is probably my favorite because it's not just Warrior. I have a regular Warrior action figure from like the 80s. It wasn't from the 80s, but a depiction of Warrior from the 80s. The one that I really like was the one I got from some wrestling action figure place in Brooklyn, actually, a couple years ago. It's of Warrior the final night that he was on Raw, the night before he passed. So on that post-WrestleMania Raw with like the plastic Warrior mask on and his jacket, I thought that was really fucking cool that they made that. So I own that. That's probably my favorite one. The other ones that I have, like I said, right next to me right now, I have Samoa Joe from WWE, Rey Mysterio that I got as part of that 2K22 thing they were doing a couple years ago, where if you bought the Rey Mysterio action figure, you could get like an exclusive deal in the game. Or that might have been 2K23 actually. I think it was 2K23. But if you get the Rey Mysterio, then you get like the building block John Cena thing in the game. So I have that. Tegan Knox, I get them as gifts sometimes, so I have a fucking Jack Swagger one. I'm not really sure why I have that one out. We're going to have to do video one of these days so I could show you guys, but the CM Punk one is one of my favorites. It was like CM Punk circa 2013, like right before he left. I think I still have a CM Punk action figure that's still in the box from like 2011, 2012 that someone gave to me a long time ago. I never took that one out. I have ones of like Matt and Jeff Hardy, that are in a box. That one of them that Matt Hardy signed probably is my favorite one, even over the Warrior one, because he signed it for me. I have a Rollins one, Jericho from AEW, Hangman from AEW, Nick Jackson, because Alexis has Matt Jackson. We got those years ago, pre-Brawl Out. But that long answer to your question, but I love questions like that. So yeah, those are some of my wrestling action figures I still have. We had a lot more that we ended up getting rid of them. A lot of them broke. I gave some of them away, like I said, but most of them, we got rid of. But the ones that I've gone in recent years, I still do have, and I do keep those. So if you were to get me a wrestling action figure, I don't get rid of shit usually, so I probably would have it here. Your second question, if you could pick anyone to face John Cena from AEW in his farewell tour, who would it be? It's a great question. It would probably be MJF, to be perfectly honest with you. If this was a year or two ago, I would have said CM Punk. But now I don't have to because he's already in WWE, and we hopefully will get that match one more time. On the anniversary, no less, of the match. We're talking about Punk and Cena here. But no, it would not be Punk because he's no longer in AEW. It probably would be MJF. I just feel like the dynamic there, not only as a match, but as a feud, that would be cool. You're saying as like a match, MJF is still amazing. But MJF, Kenny Omega would be probably pretty high up there. I'm trying to think of dream matches of people in AEW. You know what? Okada, actually. I feel like Okada-Cena might be the best match of the bunch. So I'm going to say Okada and John Cena would be the one person from AEW that I would put up against Cena. I don't know if the match would be amazing in 2024, at least on Cena's end. I know Okada can more than hold his own, obviously. But I feel like that'd be a great spectacle. Your third question, if Damian Priest ends up leaving the Judgment Day and Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio become an official couple on WWE TV, can you see Dominic taking the title off of Priest with the help of Liv later this year? That is to even assume, my friend, that Damian is leaving SummerSlam as world champion. He is not. I can almost guarantee you of that. I thought there might have been a chance that Priest would lose at Clash. Probably not. I thought there was a pretty significant chance he would lose at Money in the Bank. He did not. And now we're at SummerSlam. He is not walking out of that show, the World Heavyweight Champion. I just don't see it. So we wouldn't have to worry about that. If somehow, some way Priest did retain at SummerSlam, I still would not see Dominic Mysterio beating him for the World Heavyweight Championship. I just don't see Dominic Mysterio for all the heat that he gets. The guy is really, really good. He has evolved himself, has really transformed himself. The evolution of Dominic has been great. How far he's come in the last couple of years. I still currently do not see him as a world champion. Maybe in a couple, maybe by that point I would. Maybe in a year from now I would. Right now I don't. I feel like there's a lot more people on that roster I would rather see at that level and are better at that level and would do better in that role than Dominic, even for as much heat as he gets. So no, I would not see. I could see Dominic at some point winning the Intercontinental Championship or the United States Championship over on SmackDown, but not the World Championship, at least anytime soon. Chris W. from YouTube, their first question was, he says, "Hey Graham, hope everything is well and you are having a fantastic week. A long while back, I asked you about what were some of the worst segments in TNA history. Now this week, I want to ask, what are the greatest moments in TNA history? For me, it's Kurt Angle's TNA debut, Bully Ray putting Dixie Carter through a table at the Hammerstein Ballroom. That was one of the first ones I thought of as well, reading your question right now. Samoa Joe winning his first TNA championship, Elix Skipper's walk on top of the ring, and AJ Styles and Christian Cage winning their first titles. What are your picks?" A lot of those you're probably right on, but I was not watching TNA at the time for pretty much all of those. Kurt Angle's debut is certainly, if not number one, it's high up there. But and that is among the best segments of TNA's history. I think you nailed it right on the head. You hit the nail right on the head as far as what some of the best segments were. I can attest to them from what I've seen, but I wasn't watching TNA when those moments happened, and those were all from the first 5-6 years of TNA, most of them. The Bully Ray Dixie Carter one was pretty great. Other great moments, some of the worst moments, like you said, we already talked about, but like Victory Road and Claire Lynch, that was a whole last storyline, but that was fucking terrible. Among other moments from that time period, from 2010 through 2013, there were a lot of bad ones, and even beyond that, but specifically in that period when Bischoff and Hogan were running things. But some of the best moments from that period, I was there for the first Destination America Impact that they did. They went on hiatus in late 2014. They got booted off a Spike, and the question was, where do they go now? Are they out of business? Is this it for TNA? It wasn't. They kept going, and they went on Destination America, and they held their first, and they already had run a string of shows at the Hammerstein Ballroom in 2014, one of which I went to. That was my first ever TNA show, and I had a blast. But they ended up doing the first ever TNA show from on Destination America, and that was also short-lived, by the way. They got booted off that network by the end of the year. They did that first show, live show, from the Hammerstein Ballroom, and it was such a great show. That's one of my favorite TNA moments. I don't even really remember what else was on that show, but I remember Bobby, I think, won back the TNA World Championship. Awesome Kong return. That whole show was fucking awesome. And being there for it with my brother, who was not a wrestling fan, my older brother that I mentioned earlier, was really cool. So that is up there for me as far as recent stuff. The Ultimate Deletion match, not really a moment, more of a match, spectacle, whatever. People still talk about it from 8 years ago. The broken stuff is either for you or it's not, but there is no denying that really revived Matt Hardy's career in 2016, leading to them coming back to WWE in 2017 with a lot of buzz. A lot more buzz than they probably would have had otherwise. And that still would have been a big deal, the Hardys coming back, but the broken stuff was massive. That, I'm trying to think of other great, that's not top 5, I wouldn't say, but I'm also thinking back from earlier on in TNA's history. Their recent Hard to Kill show is really good. Trying to think of honestly, the last couple of years. They've had a string of a couple of years where it's been really, really good. When I'm trying to think of great TNA moments. AJ winning back the TNA World title, a Bound for Glory 2013, maybe. That was pretty great. Man, I'm kind of at a loss. I mean, there were other like rivals that were pretty fucking cool, but I'm trying to think of like, that first show that they went head to head with Monday Night Raw. I mean, some of it was terrible, but some of it was really, really cool, and that was also a special night too for TNA because they also did like I think their biggest rating ever with millions of viewers, which is honestly kind of crazy to think about now with the ratings that even Raw does in 2024. I'm trying to think of what else though. Trying to think of what else. I'm like 2011, 2012. Austin Aries actually winning his first TNA World Championship in 2011 was a pretty great fucking moment. Bobby Roode and James Storm, their whole feud, but specifically the culmination of it at Bound for Glory 2012 and that no holds barred street fight, whatever it was pretty fucking great. That's also pretty high up on the list. Again, there's a lot I'm just not really remembering because a lot of the moments from like 2016, 2017, 2018 were just a fucking blur. That was when the company was like in the shitter. 2018 they started to turn things around. But, for a lot of that time it was a lot of uncertainty and not a lot of great shit going on. Yeah, those are some. I'm sure there's more. I mean, you kind of nailed most of them. The Main Event Mafia I like part of. I'm trying to think of what else. Those were probably the biggest ones. I liked the end of Bound for Glory 2010 with Jeff Hardy turning heel. I still think that was cool in retrospect. It didn't end up really going anywhere or benefiting the company. It kind of didn't really do them a lot of favors. I remember when Fortune turned babyface a couple months after that because they thought Main Event Mafia was coming in with Kevin Nash and Booker T, and instead they returned to WWE. So TNA had already kind of promoted Main Event Mafia, not promoted, but heavily teased they were coming in. Booker and Nash went back to WWE instead around the Rumble time. Actually, they were both in the Men's Rumble. And then TNA was fucked, and they both signed WWE contracts around that point. So TNA turned Fortune on them instead, on Immortal instead, and that was a pretty cool moment I still look back on and really, really like. So those are just some of them. I'm sure there's many more I'm not thinking of, but those are some of the ones that came to mind. Your second question, who has a bigger legacy altogether in the professional wrestling business? The Dudley Boyz or the Hardy Boyz? Good question. I'm going to say the Hardys because I feel like the Dudleys, they're both equally accomplished and they both were around for a long time. But I just feel like the Hardys, first of all, have had more of an impact on the business. Like, more people will know who the Hardys are than the Dudleys are. And the Dudleys were around for a long time. But I just feel like the Hardys were around for a longer period of time on a mainstream scale. And have also had more success in other promotions. The Dudleys have had success in ECW. They were never in WCW. They won the WCW tag team titles. But that was after WWE had already bought the company. They were in WWF, WWE, obviously, for only really like 5 or 6 years. Like, it was a while, but not as long as the Hardys. But they were in TNA for like a fucking decade. It came back to WWE for like 1 year in 2015, and that was it. The Hardys have had a longer run. I mean, just objectively speaking, they debuted in the 90s. They had their success in the late 90s, early 2000s as a really popular team. They split up a couple times, but they would always reunite throughout the 2000s, and that's why people know who they are, because Jeff Hardy's a fucking rock star. They were always a great team. They would always reunite and get a big pop for it. And they had a lot of great matches. They really helped out the ladder match. They've revolutionized the ladder match, and other people did it before them, but they played a big role in that. Like the Dudley Boyz with the tables, the Hardys were really, the ladders in that equation around that point, which is what led to TLC in the early 2000s. But yeah, like they dominated the 2000s wrestling scene in WWE. They were there for a really long time. They both left in 2009, 2010. Matt had some issues there for a little while, but Jeff Hardy went to TNA, and then when Matt got his act together, they both went to TNA together, and they were a team over there, did well in TNA, did the broken stuff, really revived their careers that way, came back to WWE, immediately became tag team champions of WrestleMania, one of the greatest WrestleMania moments of all time, at WrestleMania 33, and had a little bit of a run there in 2017. They briefly reunited in 2019, and then Jeff got hurt again. So they were tag team champions briefly at that point, like very, very briefly. But they won belts during that run. And then they went away. And then they kind of got hurt, one left, whatever. They were recently in AEW, and now they're back in TNA. Haven't had a whole lot of success in recent years, but, even still, I mean, Jeff Hardy and Matt are still incredibly over as a fucking team. And I feel like they've The Dudley Boyz are one of the greatest teams of all time. I would probably, as far as legacy go Hardys over the Dudleys. As far as their accomplishments, the Dudleys are also, obviously, they're probably pretty equal in that respect. And the Dudleys were always over. The Hardy Boys were much more over long-term than the Dudleys. I mean, the Dudleys were always over as well because they're a great team. But the Hardys really just hit that next level with all different demographics. Everyone knows the Hardys for the most point. That music always gets a pop, even today, for as broken down as they are, no pun intended, as people would say. They're still a great team. And I love both guys, just individually anyways, people. I've met them many, many times, specifically Matt, and he's awesome. So I got to go Hardy Boys, not for that reason, but just in general, I would probably say Hardys over Dudleys. Next question of his. There are multiple reports that AEW is looking to do a stadium show next year in the Dallas area. I'm actually super excited to hear about this, as by doing this and having a strong enough gate could be a stepping stone and being seen as a true alternative to WWE, and will prove the wrestling business is hot once again. Where do you think they're going for the show? Do you think they could get a believably big gate for the show? And do you think this could be the new tradition for All In? Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's cool. So they would be ditching Wembley Stadium to go to the States for their biggest show of the year. I honestly don't know how big of a gate it would be. I really don't. Like, they really need to do more shows in Texas, like pay-per-views and stuff like that. People have always said that. But if they can't pull in, like, even a couple thousand, like, they've been doing Dynamites, and I don't know if it starts this week or if it already started, but, like, they're running, like, some fucking college area in the Texas area for the next month or the next couple of weeks for Dynamites and Collisions and Ring of Honor and shit. If they can only pull in a couple thousand people for those shows, obviously All In as a pay-per-view, people would travel from all over to go to that. I don't see that doing a massive number. London last year was one thing because they had never touched that market before. It was very special. They're going to do a lot of people at Wembley this year too. Not nearly as many as last year, I don't think. And I was proven wrong last year. I think this year it will indeed be smaller, but we'll see as it gets closer. It's really only next month. Like, by this time last year, I think they had sold a lot more tickets than what they currently have out. The wrestling audience in America is just different. I don't see, unless they have an amazing card, but even then, the buzz around AEW has to be such that people are willing to fly out to go to that show. If they were to do AT&T Stadium, which is cool, first of all, they're not doing 100,000 people. Like, people thinking, oh, they're going to try to break the WWE record. The WWE record there, I think, is 90-something thousand. It's not 100,000. That was obviously an inflated number. It might even be 80,000, actually. I don't even know if AEW does that much. I don't. In this day and age, with where AEW is, and even in Texas, it's not as an overexposed market as Chicago or New York at this point and whatever. I just don't see that happening. I still think it's a great idea. I don't want to poo-poo on it. I still think it's a really cool idea. They should do it. And what else did you ask here? You're saying, could they get a believably big gate for it? Like, relative to what? I mean, big is in a couple, like, tens of thousands, maybe. I think they would. Tens of thousands, I think they would. 50, 60, 70, I'm very much more skeptical about that. But I would love to see them prove me wrong. I think it would probably be, if they're going to do a big stadium show in Texas, where else would it be? I don't really know a lot about Texas, so I'm not really sure. But the first arena that came to mind, or stadium, was AT&T. So, could that be the new tradition for All In to do like a stadium show here in the States? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always have to be in Wembley. I was surprised they ran it back as quickly as they did for this year because they thought, oh, this was so successful, let's do it again next year. And it's not going to hit the same without as many people in attendance, but it will still be a big gate in London. If they want to shop it around to see where would make the most sense and have, do their biggest gate of the year, like have that be their WrestleMania, that's totally fine by me. I think that's a pretty cool tradition. I honestly think part of the problem with AEW, and this is just me, and other people have other opinions, and that's okay. I think part of their problem is that they don't have like a year-long arc with some of their shows. All their shows are great, which is awesome, but it doesn't feel like one... I feel like one of them should feel more special than the rest. Double or Nothing has not been that show in a long time. All In can be that show if it does their biggest gate, and they build their biggest storylines and feuds around that show. Going from June to August, that being their WrestleMania season, I feel like that would be really, really cool, and I would totally be on board for that. His last question, and it's a funny one, are you an ice cream pie or cake guy? Are you a fan of all three? And if so, which one are your favorite flavors of each? I actually do not like eating pie. It depends what kind of pie it is. I'm sure I've eaten pie. I'm sure of it. But if someone's like, oh, I got like apple pie or this kind of pie, I'm like, no thanks. Like anything, and I like apple, but anything with apple in it for the most part, aside from like apple juice or apple flavored like candy or some shit, I don't like. Like apple pie, stuff like that, I don't like that. So pie is easily 3, far below the other 2. I like cake. I do. Between ice cream and cake, I prefer ice cream. Just something about cake. I like birthday cake. Like it has the layers and like the chocolate bits in it and shit. I really like that. I like cake in general, but it's not, I don't know. I would just much prefer ice cream. So my favorite flavors of each, I mentioned the cake thing. For the pie, honestly, I will say I don't like pie, but the Hershey pies, the little slices of pie they give you at Burger King are fucking amazing. So I'll probably say that for that. For cake, double chocolate cake I've stayed away from for the past 10 plus years. My grandmother would make it all the time, like double chocolate cake. It would like blow up my stomach. Like it was just too much. And I like chocolate, but it was just too much chocolate. So like anything light, just like, I don't know, just basic cake probably is fine with me. If not birthday cake, as I mentioned. Or Oreo cake. That's also really, really good. I like Oreo cake. Favorite ice creams, you guys know, hopefully. I mentioned it enough times, I think. Coffee flavored ice cream, which is bizarre because I don't like coffee. The only coffee I like is a mocha frap from McDonald's. That's really about it. Otherwise, I do not drink coffee. I don't even drink those often at all. But I don't drink coffee. But I like coffee-flavored ice cream, specifically. So, my favorite flavor in the last couple of years, because I don't know if it was a thing prior to this point, is now Oreo coffee Oreo. An amazing flavor of ice cream. So, any place that has that, and more places are adopting that flavor, that is my favorite flavor of ice cream. Easily coffee Oreo. If not coffee Oreo, then regular coffee is fine. Regular Oreo is fine. I always liked cookies and cream for a long time. I liked, and I still do, I like that still. I still like mint chocolate chip. The yellow, not the yellow, hopefully not yellow. The white mint chocolate chip is good. I prefer the green mint chocolate chip. And a lot of people don't like mint chocolate chip green because it tastes like fucking toothpaste or whatever because it's minty. Totally fine, I get that. I love mint chocolate chip ice cream, the green ice cream. Chocolate, regular, basic chocolate, regular, basic vanilla. I don't like a lot of flavors, but I like those. And then also, if they have a s'mores flavor, I had that for a long time. There's an ice cream shop right around here, actually, and I was getting the s'mores flavor for a long time. It's called Graham Central Station instead of Grand Central Station, get it? And not because of me either. It's like Graham Cracker. That's why it's called that. I didn't just get it because my fucking name was in it, like I'm a narcissist or something. But it's a great flavor. Alexis gets it, and it's a great flavor. So, coffee Oreo is my number one, though. Jordan B. from YouTube, their question was, what are some of your favorite steel cage matches? For me, it is Matt Hardy versus Edge from Unforgiven 05, Ric Flair versus Triple H, Taboo Tuesday 05, Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus, Payback 03, or 2023, not 03, Payback 2023, Brock Lesnar versus Triple H, Extreme Rules 2013, and Mr. Anderson versus Kurt Angle, TNA Lockdown 2010. That's a good question, but honestly, not a lot of steel cage matches come to mind. Like, they've been so bastardized in the past 15, 16 years in all promotions, where I don't even really know if I have a favorite one. I have favorite Hell in the Cell matches. I don't really have, like, a favorite steel cage match. And I'm sure there are some that I really, really liked that don't come to mind. I think the best one that I've seen in the last couple of years, honestly, was the Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks. And I was there for that one at All Out 2021. One of the best tag team matches in the last number of years, if not ever. Just an amazing match. So that would probably be my number one, but I had to look up to kind of jog my memory. What are some of the best cage matches in the last number of years? This one isn't like my favorite by any means, but it is probably the best cage match of all time, if not up there on the list. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart from SummerSlam 1994 rather, for the WWE Championship. Probably the best cage match of all time. So that's not like my favorite because I haven't seen it like a million times, but it is really a great cage match. Another one of my favorites I totally forgot about, and I had seen, I guess Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt had a cage match on a house show, but there was one on Raw because I was looking up like the list of cage matches in the last like 10 years. they had the one on Raw that I totally forgot about. It was Bryan and Wyatt versus the Usos. And the match itself probably wasn't like a spectacle, but that was the one that they followed up on by having Bray get laid out by Bryan and the entire Wyatt family crawling on the outside. Bryan got them away, and then he celebrates in the top of the cage. One of the best endings in Raw history. So the match itself was overshadowed by the angle, but the match was fun from what I recall, and that it was a good match, and the subsequent angle was amazing. So that would be on the list. I know you mentioned Trish and Becky. That would also probably be in my top 5. That was a great cage match, a great way to kick off that pay-per-view last year. They had a really, really good cage match, probably the best women's cage match of all time. And I'm sure there's other ones, not a whole lot, but a few. That would be the best, I think. I was reminded of John Cena, The Miz, and John Morrison from Extreme Rules 2011 for the WWE Championship. That was a fun cage match. I love that entire show, but that main event was a really, really good main event. Cena winning back the belt right after the WrestleMania 27 debacle with Rock costing him the championship, blah, blah, blah. So that was a good cage match. And I also forgot about this one. This might be my favorite or one of my top favorites because I've already seen it so many times from watching Jeff Hardy's DVD. And not like a, one from the early 2000s or whatever, but rather the 2009 one with CM Punk. And Jeff Hardy had a lot of cage matches, I think, in tag teams, and the one against Umaga on Raw in 08. I wasn't a fan during that period, so I don't really remember the match if I have even seen that match, but I know that it happened. But I did watch this match, and I've gone back and watched it so many times from watching Jeff Hardy's My Life, My Rules DVD from 2009, because that was his final match in WWE up to that point. Punk beat him to retain not only the World Heavyweight Championship, but retain his career, because Jeff Hardy, by losing, was gone from SmackDown, gone from WWE. In his post-match speech about oh, this isn't goodbye forever, this is just goodbye for now, which it was goodbye for a good 7 years, 7-8 years. But yeah, that one always really stuck out to me. That was a really, really good cage match as well. So those are some of my favorites. Brandon A. from YouTube, he says, "What's up, GSM? Hope all is well as usual. I know you thought my card for last week for AEW/WWE Forbidden Door was subpar. Hopefully I can bounce back this week. Again, I wanted one of the 4 pillars to open up every show. Finding a good match for Jack Perry was pretty difficult, but with Cena's return at Money in the Bank, I figured let's throw him in there. Back around 2020 or 2017 or 2018, I wanted to do a WWE versus New Japan Supercard, and I had John Cena versus Tanahashi as a match I wanted, but both guys were too broken down for that to work now. I agree with that. Plus, Tanahashi doesn't work for AEW, obviously, and this is not a show about New Japan. Anyway, let's see how you feel about this one. Night 3 of his Forbidden Door AEW versus WWE card. So here we go. Number 1, Darby Allin versus Braun Breaker. That's a really interesting matchup. Number 2, Meat Madness, 10-man tag. I thought that was the name of a tag team for a second. I'm like, what fucking tag team is called Meat Madness? Is that the Iron Savages or something? Like, the fuck is that? Team AEW, Powerhouse Hobbs, Wardlow, Brian Cage, Shane Taylor, and Keith Lee versus Team WWE, Braun Strowman, Bronson Reed, Ivar, Otis, and Bobby Lashley. Holy shit, that's a lot of meat. Number 3, Lyra Valkyria versus Athena. That's a really good match, actually. Number 4, LWO, Dragon Lee and Rey Mysterio versus Top Flight. That would be awesome. 5, Rush versus Andrade. That sells itself. 6, Charlotte Flair versus Willow Nightingale. That's an interesting matchup. The Ultimate Heel versus the Ultimate Babyface. I like that. 7, Orange Cassidy versus Chad Gable. That's really random, but I mean, that could be a good match, I think. In Triple Threat Main Event, Bayley versus Mercedes Moné. I mean, obviously. 9, Samoa Joe versus Gunther. Fuck yeah. And 10, Seth Rollins versus Will Ospreay. Hope you like it. Also, is there an email address I can use to contact you about possibly meeting up around SummerSlam? Mine is, and he put his email. Yeah, I'll send you an email. I was actually going to say this week, I was thinking about it the other day, just to send me a form or something through my website on WrestleRant.com. The email is also on the YouTube page and the business email and shit, but you could send a form through the contact form on my website. But you don't have to, actually, because you just gave me your email, so I'll shoot you up soon. And shoot you up, that does not sound good. I'll hit you up on email, and we'll figure something out as far as where you're going to be that weekend, what shows you're going to, SummerSlam, obviously, but where we can meet up along the way. So we will definitely make it happen. I appreciate you giving me that, and I'm looking forward to the weekend. Everything is booked. I know where I'm going. I know how I'm getting there. I know when I'm getting there. Everything's good to go. So I look forward to seeing you there, Brandon. As far as your card for the Forbidden Door show, that looks fucking awesome. That is a lot better than last week. A lot better than last week. So yeah, I give you 2 thumbs up on that. That might even be better than night 1. That was a really, really good night. Night 1 was really good, but night 3 was even better, I think. I'd have to go back and look at it. Emmanuel A. from YouTube, their first question was, how many people do you think Chris Jericho has elevated in AEW? Jake Hager did an interview recently where he defended Chris Jericho's current work, of course he did, by saying that unlike some people, and he singled out Triple H, The Undertaker, and most notably Sting, I saw that, which was fucking weird that he would say that. Jericho puts people over, is what Jake Hager said. I think MJF also defended Jericho once in the open letter that he put out before AEW's World's End in 2023 by saying that Jericho legitimized AEW, the world title, and him. Is Jericho still better than most veterans in helping out others, or has the Jericho vortex, quote-unquote, done more harm than good? MJF was not wrong. I don't think Jericho legitimized MJF. MJF was already a star before the Jericho feud. MJF then went on to feud with CM Punk. If anything legitimized MJF as a main event player, it was the Punk feud, not the Jericho feud. The Jericho feud went on for way too fucking long. It was largely a waste of time. I enjoyed most of it, but it went on for way too fucking long. The Punk feud really was what elevated MJF more than anything Jericho did with MJF. But he's not wrong about how Jericho legitimized AEW in the world title early on. Jericho, for whatever you think of the guy now, and I think a lot of what he's doing right now is fucking terrible. And of course his friends are going to defend it in interviews because they're friends with him. They're not going to shit on it. But whatever you think of the guy, he did legitimize that world championship. He was the perfect first person to be their inaugural AEW world champion. Adam Page at that point was not ready. And I thought Adam Page would be the perfect person, and I was wrong at the time because I thought, man, it's a mistake they're putting the belt on Jericho. He's an ex-WWE guy. How do they do that? But he had name recognition. Jericho could go even more then than he could now. He was doing a little bit of the bubbly stuff, and that was over. That was entertaining. His character work back then was great. They gave him the Inner Circle. That was entertaining. Jericho was the perfect first person to be the world champion for AEW. Not Hangman, not really anyone else, not even Kenny Omega. So he really did help out AEW in the beginning. At this point, if Jericho was not on TV or is not there or leaves, it doesn't make a lick of a fucking difference. At least on screen. I'm sure backstage he helps out a lot of talent. I know he's friends with a lot of those guys. He believes in a lot of those people, men and women, whatever. But at the same time, product-wise, he does not make a lick of a fucking difference. If anything, he makes the shows worse. Every time I look at the lineup for Dynamite and I see Jericho's face, I'm thinking, man, this is only going to make the show worse. Honestly, like I looked at the lineup for Dynamite tonight, Dynamite 250 or whatever it is, and I saw that we're getting one of those TV time segments with Chris Jericho and the Learning Tree. The fuck is this bullshit? So I do think the Jericho Vortex has done more harm than good. I think Jake Hager's comment was incredibly fucking stupid. I don't know everything that Jericho has done behind the scenes and stuff like that, but I'm sure he's helped out AEW a lot in that respect. But as far as on screen, like Triple H has run WWE for the past fucking decade. He's put over a lot of people through running NXT and behind the scenes, stuff like that. Undertaker wasn't really elevating anyone, although he did put over Brock, and he didn't elevate Brock. I mean, actually, you know what? By Brock losing, or Brock beating the streak, it did elevate Brock and made him even more of a superstar than he already was. It didn't really elevate Roman to lose, for Taker to lose to him in 2017. Still, Taker didn't really put over a lot of people towards the end there. Jericho's much more full-time than those guys were anyway. The Sting thing is so fucking dumb, because I saw that comment that he made about Sting. Sting did not lose a single match in his entire AEW run. Did he elevate anyone by losing to them? No. But Sting, I would make the argument, did elevate people and make things better by, first of all, even simply being there, and two, by even facing some of these people. It was a big deal for anyone to get in the ring with Sting because he's such a special attraction at this point in his career. I mean, it's over now. But when he was in AEW, he was such an attraction for people to be working with him, feuding with him, and it made Darby Allin more of a main event performer and got him even more over than he was pre-Sting. I mean, he helped out Darby more than anyone. But, I mean, looking at even if Sting didn't elevate people, at least he didn't take away from people by beating them. Jericho working with so many people, even when Jericho loses to some of these people, they don't really benefit. Eddie Kingston did benefit a little bit when he beat Jericho 2.5 years ago, Revolution 2022. But then they went back on it by continuing the feud and having Jericho beat him in what was it, Stadium Stampede or whatever the fuck it was at that point. And then they did Blood and Guts, and Eddie Kingston's team won. And then they did the barbed wire match, and Jericho won that, and then Kingston never got his win back. That hurt Eddie Kingston. He was off TV for a very long time after that. Jericho worked with Adam Cole last year. I thought the feud was fine. Didn't really benefit Adam Cole. It kind of cooled him off more than anything. He worked with Ricky Starks last year, put him over twice. Where did Ricky Starks go from there? Not really anywhere, honestly. He won the Owen Hart Cup that summer, but he went on to do nothing on television. Jericho was still on TV working with people like Adam Cole, while Ricky Starks was not on TV. He was working with Jay White and wasn't winning a whole lot of matches. They didn't really catapult his career the way that Jericho thought it would, or Tony Khan thought it would, or whatever. The Inner Circle, Sammy Guevara, I mean, I guess you can make the argument it did elevate him from where he was when he started in the company, sure. But he's been associated with Jericho for so long now, I don't give a fuck about Sammy Guevara at all. Not as much as I did 3-4 years ago. MJF, he didn't really help. I mean, yeah, they kept MJF busy for a while, and the feud was entertaining for a little bit, but it's not as if MJF was all of a sudden a main event player. He was already on that level even before he worked with Jericho. John Moxley was already a star, didn't elevate John Moxley. Jake Hager was always a fucking bum. Santana Ortiz didn't elevate them at all. I mean, Santana's gone. Ortiz isn't even on television. Danny Garcia, yes, it did elevate him, but when he was at his hottest, they did not capitalize on that, and instead he lost to him. And he didn't lose to Jericho, but like he would constantly lose matches, and then he just joined back up with Jericho. And now he's only just now regaining his momentum, and not because of Jericho. So, no, I disagree completely with Jake Hager. I think Sting did more for AEW and to put people over by simply, and not even to put people over, he did not detract from the product. Chris Jericho has. The Jericho Vortex, the same way that the Cody Vortex do, like, what Cody's doing now is amazing, but what he was doing in the last couple of years of his AEW run was fucking terrible, dude. Like, and his matches weren't bad. Like, Jericho's matches aren't really that bad at all. It's more so the principle that, like, everything these people do is in its own little vortex and doesn't affect the rest of the show. And it's not entertaining television. Like, the Cody Rhodes QT Marshall feud was awful. Didn't elevate QT Marshall at all whatsoever. That was a complete waste of time. The Cody Andrade feud didn't really go anywhere. Cody Malachi should have elevated Malachi, and it didn't. Like, Cody was another one. Like, he wasn't really doing shit to elevate people. He would lose to people, but it wasn't really elevating anyone. The TNT Open Challenge did, but that was in 2020. It was after that was over where Cody was like, okay, he's not really benefiting the product at all. I mean, behind the scenes as like a cheerleader he is and being such a positive influence for the company. But as far as, you know, some of the stuff that he was doing on television, it took away from the product. The same way that Jericho is right now, in my opinion. Jericho kind of took that spot over for Cody Rhodes. When Cody left in 2022, Jericho officially became the worst thing on the entire show. And having 3 different fucking groups doesn't help either. His second question, on a similar note, how many people do you think Edge has elevated since his 2020 return? A lot of people have lamented that Edge has only really lost one feud with Roman Reigns and has gotten a win back against everyone else who has beaten him, Finn Balor being the most infamous example. Do you think it's natural that Edge has been so protected in WWE and AEW and that he puts people over regardless, or has his comeback mostly been on the self-serving side? I don't think it's really self-serving. People can say shit. I genuinely believe Edge when he says that he wants to help out the younger talent. I feel like if he didn't want to work with the younger talent, I don't think he would have gone to AEW. I mean, he's been working with Christian for the last fucking 6 to 9 months, and that ended a few months ago, and then he was working with Malachi and whatever. Didn't really elevate the House of Black by doing that feud, but it was a fun feud for what it was, and they had a good match at Double or Nothing. But, you know, Edge, honestly, is another one of those guys. He didn't really lose a lot of matches in WWE when he was there from 2020 to 2023. But the idea that, like, Grayson Waller's in-ring debut was with Edge was a big deal for Grayson Waller. Did it elevate him? I mean, I would put that more on the booking, but it didn't really elevate him. The Finn Balor feud was annoying. I don't really put that on Edge. I think that was a WWE call. Balor really should have won that. That was a complete waste of Balor and the Demon at WrestleMania 39. That didn't really elevate Balor. But listen, by working with Edge, it did elevate the Judgment Day. Edge, the biggest people that he put over during that run, like he worked with a lot of legends and people that were already established. which is what you should do. You can't be working entirely with new people. They had to do the Rollins match and the Roman match, and he gave Rollins some of the best matches of his entire career. Did it elevate Rollins? No. Rollins was directionless as fuck in mid-2021. He was feuding with Cesaro, lost that feud, beat him in the end, blah, blah, blah. He was doing nothing. And then the Edge feud came around, and Rollins did some of his best character work before 2022 when the Roman stuff came around, and then he turned into a babyface again by the end of the year. The Edge feud was awesome for Seth Rollins. Really put Edge, back in a great feud, gave him some great matches. The Roman matches were good. Edge didn't really elevate a lot of people, but again, by simply working with Edge, it did benefit some people, and again, he was more entertaining. The Jericho stuff is not entertaining, so it's not all about elevating everyone that you work with. As long as you're not taking away from the show. Edge has been a big part of AEW. He's had a really, really good run, hasn't lost a lot of matches, and when he has, it's meant something. And again, he hasn't lost a lot of matches at all, but when he does, it feels like a big deal because he doesn't lose all that much. And that's really what it should be. People of his caliber shouldn't be going 50-50 in my opinion. They should be winning most of their matches, and then when it comes time to lose, it should be to someone that can benefit. Christian didn't really benefit from beating Edge because he's beaten him before, and what's the big deal? But, in WWE, I would say what I was going to say a moment ago, and I forgot to say it. The biggest people that he elevated during that run was the Judgment Day. And the Judgment Day has obviously been better without Edge than it was with Edge, which I wasn't sold on 2 years ago when they booted Edge and they put Finn Balor in his spot. But Balor has been better off since joining Judgment Day, and that's not really on Edge. But he turned on Edge and took a spot in the group. Triple H saved Judgment Day more than Edge did, but Edge was the one who lobbied to get Balor in the group. He was the one who lobbied to get Rhea Ripley in there and Damian Priest. And all three of those people, are far better off now than they were 2 years ago. Damian Priest was going nowhere fast until the Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley felt completely cold and directionless until the Judgment Day. They were good talents, but they weren't really doing anything. Edge was the one who said, I want to work with these people and get them to the next level. And he did. Again, they turned on him and whatnot, but they took what he built and took it that much farther. It made it that much better. And I think that was great too. So I would argue that he helped them out a lot, more than anything Jericho has done really in AEW, at least in my opinion. Not that Jericho's entire run has been shit. The first year or so was fine, but did Jericho really elevate Orange Cassidy, which is another thing Jake Hager mentioned in that interview that you were talking about. He's like, oh, how hot was Orange Cassidy after that feud? Yeah, he was already fucking popular. Beating Jericho did nothing. That Mimosa Mayhem garbage was fucking trash. Jericho did nothing but honestly cool Cassidy off more than anything. So I just thought that interview was so laughable. But yeah, I think Edge has had a good run in WWE and AEW, at least in my opinion. No L from YouTube. Their question was, do you see the Ring General finally becoming the world champion at SummerSlam? I do. I mentioned that before, but I do see Gunther walking out of SummerSlam the new world heavyweight champion. I would be surprised if he did not. No L, second question. What did you think of the Bo Dallas segment on Raw? I thought it was great. We got Bo in the ring with the Wyatt Six for the first time, all together as a group, because even when they debuted, the debut took place backstage when they filmed it. It wasn't in the ring. So we got the entire group in the ring for the first time with Bo unmasked. I thought he did a good job kind of channeling his inner Bray Wyatt with what he was saying and acting and his mannerisms and shit, which was crazy. We got the Gable Creed Brothers alliance finally. Didn't go off like a major moment. Didn't come off like a major moment. The crowd didn't really react. But that wasn't the point of the segment. But I thought that was cool as well. And I thought the whole thing was cool. I'm still hooked in. I'm still locked in and compelled by what they're doing with the Wyatt Six. I don't know where it's going. I don't know if we're getting Bo Dallas and Chad Gable or a 6-man tag team match at SummerSlam. I'm not sure. But they do have me hooked, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Christopher L. from YouTube or Facebook? I think it's Facebook. I said YouTube, or I think I might have said Facebook before. I don't remember. But anyway, no, Christopher L. from Facebook. I'm sorry, from Facebook. I answered Chris's questions from YouTube earlier. My apologies. His first Facebook question was, one of the things I've noticed at media scrums for both WWE and AEW is that media outlets never seem to ask the hard-nosed questions or these serious questions. They always find a way to tiptoe around the hard questions and instead butter up to the people they are interviewing. Why do you feel they do that, and does it sort of demean their jobs as journalists? I thought you were including the second question with that question. I just formatted it incorrectly. Because the next question was, what matches are you most excited for at both SummerSlam and All In? And I thought that was part of your last question. I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. And I realized that's its own question. That's my bad. As far as the media scrums things, listen, I'm guilty of that too. I'm at these things, not all of them. It is difficult because you have to come up with a question that has not been asked, that's relevant, that's important, and doesn't tiptoe around the important issues. The biggest reason as to why people do that, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, is like the way that people like suck up to some of these wrestlers is fucking weird. Like when I don't like this. I don't like when the media scrums, at least at this point, now become, like if they're in kayfabe, that's one thing. I don't love that, but whatever. But like when Damian Priest was like, "All rise for your world champion," and then everyone stands up, I just think that's goofy. I think that's really stupid. Like I'm not here to go along with the character shit. Like I'm here to do my job and ask questions that people want to know the answers to. And then you ask the Vince stuff, because again, who was it? Forgot his name, but I don't remember his name. But it's the same guy that's asked WrestleNomics, the WrestleNomics gentleman. His name is escaping me right now, but he asked about Vince at the Money in the Bank press conference, and people online were like, "Oh, how could he ask that? Like, it's not relevant anymore." And like, it kind of is. Like, his question was relevant, and he got shit for it online. He caught a lot of flack for it from fans. So you can't really please everyone. If you don't ask about it, it's a problem. If you do ask about it, it's a problem. People will never really be completely satisfied, but it is important to ask those sort of questions. When you're asking, like, John Cena, are you going to retire the jorts? Like, I guess that's relevant, but that to me seems like a fucking goofy question. Like, is that really important? Like, who gives a shit? And if you don't have a good question asked, then don't raise your hand. But I have said before, like, sometimes, at least with me anyway, they will come to me and ask me if you want to ask a question. I guess sometimes if I don't have a question, I'll say I should say no. But usually I either come up with one quickly or have some prepared knowing who might be there. So I try to get some intel beforehand as far as who might be there so I can craft my questions ahead of time. And nowadays they announce people for these press conferences. A couple months ago or even a year ago, they were not doing that. You would just go there and you would get who you get. And it would be difficult to ask stuff on the spot. So, I mean, I've asked a lot of, not softball questions, but questions that were not great in retrospect, in my opinion, because I didn't have a lot to kind of go off of. Like when it comes to like Tiffany Stratton, for example, what are you really going to ask her during set? Like if someone throws her a softball question, I think that's fine. That doesn't really bother me that much because like the fuck am I going to ask Tiffany Stratton about? Like I'm not going to ask her about Vince. Like Triple H is the person to ask about that sort of stuff. Or John Cena rather. Not Tiffany. You know what I mean? So like when people ask her, "Oh, are you going to bedazzle your briefcase?" Like that doesn't really bother me because again, like the fuck else are you going to ask her? It bothers me more when you get the bigger stars, Punk and Cena primarily, but largely Triple H. And people ask, "When are you coming back to Toronto? When are you coming back to London?" It's like, I know people ask questions based on their outlet and what they're going for. I get it. But like a lot of these people come from newspapers and shit too. So that's why they ask that sort of stuff. But I hate when Triple H wastes a question or wastes time on talking about the local area like we don't already know this shit. Like he's not going to say, "Oh yeah, we're coming back here next year." Like he doesn't know. No one fucking knows. So I think those questions are a waste. But they're difficult though because you got to ask something respectfully, but also make sure you address the issue. Like primarily I remember, and again, a lot of these people are great people. Nothing against them because I'm a part of these things. I'm also guilty of it, so I totally get it. But I remember when I was at the World's End one, when the Jericho stuff was asked about, when the whole Kylie Ray thing was going on and Jericho was accused, and that never really went anywhere. But this guy had asked about it, one guy, and several people asked about it like point blank, like, "Hey, can you comment on this?" And the answer was whatever it was from Tony Khan or whoever. But one gentleman had said, "Oh, I don't want to, I don't want to bring the mood down. I don't want to offend you." It's like, well, these are questions that you shouldn't feel that you're offending these people by asking because these are things that need to be asked. If it's important, like there is a really fine line. There's a lot of gray area there as well. It's difficult. It's a really difficult process, more than people think. But if you're going to throw that away to ask, are you going to face Taylor Swift at WrestleMania, Io Sky? That to me is where I'm like, okay, this is fucking stupid. Like, what are we doing here? When that sort of shit happens, I'm like, I feel embarrassed and people will never forget about that and it makes everyone else look bad. If you ask like a soft question or something, you're not going to get a great answer out of it. It is what it is, depending on the person. But when you ask, like, again, I know Io Sky, you're not going to ask her the hard-hitting questions. What hard-hitting questions can you fucking ask Io Sky? But like when you're asking her about Taylor Swift, like, what are we doing here? That just screams to me like you just want attention. That you want publicity, that you want people talking about you. That to me is pretty stupid. That's just my experience with that. I could do a whole separate video on those media scrums, and maybe I could save that for the channel member tier. We'll see. Your second question was, what matches are you most excited for at both SummerSlam and All In? SummerSlam, I'm looking forward to Cody and Solo, not really. Damian Priest and Gunther, I think, will be really good. I'm looking forward to Ria and Liv. I think that'll be a great match. Obviously, really looking forward to Punk and McIntyre. I'm looking forward to Logan Paul and LA Knight finally. It's about time we got that match. And there's going to be other matches, but probably those three are my most anticipated matches. Braun and Sammy, if they have a rematch on that show, should also be very good. At All In, I'm really looking forward to, because we don't really know the card yet, but I am looking forward to Britt Baker and Mercedes Moné. I think that'll be a big match for the women. If we get Willow and Chris Statlander, I think that'll be good. Tony and Mariah May might be my most anticipated match on that entire show as of right now. We're getting MJF and Will Ospreay tonight. I don't know if we're getting Will Ospreay versus Ricochet All In, or with Pac, or a triple threat. Will Ospreay and Pac would be amazing. Garcia and MJF, I don't really care too much about, but that'll be a good match. Swerve and Danielson, they announced officially. I'm excited for that. So I think both shows will be good. All In, maybe even more so than SummerSlam. SummerSlam should be good. All In, I think, has more matches I'm looking forward to than SummerSlam currently. Their next question. On Monday night, the Women's Championship match at SummerSlam was set with Rhea versus Liv. While I've warmed up a little bit to Liv's behavior during the storyline, and I'm happy to see Rhea back, I am shocked to see people actually feel bad for Rhea in all of this. While it's understandable that Liv is the villain in all of this due to her despicable and crass behavior, people seem to have forgotten that Rhea mangled her arm out of malicious intent and put her on the shelf. Liv's revenge is justifiable, thus making her somewhat the babyface, despite Rhea being the more over one of the two. Have people forgotten that this whole situation with Liv, Dom, and Rhea is pretty much Rhea's fault? No, you're right. People have forgotten that. It's a recency bias thing, as people are going off of what we've seen since the spring, forgetting about the fact that Rhea brutally injured Liv and has cost her, and she also turned on her 2 years ago as well. Like, Rhea's been a big issue. It's been a big thorn in the side of Liv for a long time now. And I always thought Liv should dethrone Rhea as Women's World Champion, given their history. Now the roles are reversed. They made the story even better with Dominic. I like that, though. I don't just like the dynamic that we're getting with these two. What I like is that they're embracing the organic nature of it, because Rhea was, even as a heel, was always more over than Liv. So they just turned her babyface. And they kind of muddy the waters with the Liv character, where she is right. You're right. Everything that she's done, she's justified in doing. At least to Rhea Ripley, anyway. But then she also attacked Becky Lynch. Like, she's not... Again, it's like Drew McIntyre. It's a complex character, because Drew has been fucked over so much. You get why he's frustrated. But the way that he goes about things is part of the problem. Like, attacking Punk makes sense. But him not apologizing to the referees or attacking them, not okay. That's what makes him a heel. Liv Morgan, kind of the same thing. Getting Dom away from Rhea, I mean, that doesn't really make her a heel. But like when she's out there cheating in her matches and, going off on Zelina Vega for no reason, or, attacking Becky Lynch and cheating her out of the Women's World Championship or whatever, that is what makes her a heel. Her intentions are pure. No one wants to... It's like the Jericho-Shawn Michaels thing. I mean, that's one of the greatest feuds in WWE history. And, I mean, Bayley, same thing with Io Sky just recently. Not one of the greatest feuds ever, but Bayley was a bitch to Io for the longest time. Io was justified in turning on Bayley, but Bayley was the more over of the two, so they kind of twisted the story. But back to Shawn and Jericho, back in 2008, Shawn cheated in a match with Batista, and I think he may have cheated in a match with Jericho as well. And Jericho didn't appreciate the fact that Shawn would cheat and he would lie, and people would still cheer for him, like Eddie Guerrero back in the day as well. And he turned heel out of that because he was annoyed. And he was pissed, like he was right for being annoyed, but attacking Shawn the way that he did was not justified. So it's like the same thing. I like that they've twisted the story to kind of make it feel like you can cheer for who you want. And again, I think most stories need a clear babyface and heel. In this situation, Liv is the heel, but she also has reason for doing what she's done. And I like that a lot. I like the complexity of the situation. His next question here. 2 weeks ago, I was gobsmacked by two segments from two different shows involving women's wrestlers. One was on NXT involving Lola Vice and Roxanne Perez. This was the promo segment before their great match at Heatwave, and I thought it was an absolute disaster. The promo, not the match, he's saying. Lola's acting mixed with Roxanne's god-awful cadence and forgetting her lines throughout the segment, made for one of the worst segments in pro wrestling all year, with both women completely miscast in their parts, and the roles should have been reversed. On the other side is the AEW Dynamite segment with Britt and Mercedes Moné in Chicago, a superior segment in every way. What started out as a speech of self-reconstruction is interrupted by an obnoxious celebration by the new double champ, and the two have a simple back and forth between them that felt organic and felt real. Both were perfect in their roles, and the crowd was eating it up. Why was the NXT segment such a misfire and the AEW segment such a home run? I mean, for that one specific week, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weeks where AEW promos are awful and NXT promos are better, but for this one week, you are correct. That NXT segment did suck. I didn't really mind Roxanne's role. I mean, she wasn't great. She did forget her lines at one point, I think. But I think, honestly, Lola more than even Roxanne. Roxanne had a great promo in comparison to Lola's. Lola's was just fucking awful. I mean, she got emotional, but, like, was she fake emotional? And then she was, like, shaking her ass even though she was upset. It was terrible. Like, that segment was indeed really, really bad. The match was good. The segment sucked. I don't really agree on I mean, yeah, she's a natural babyface, but I don't really agree on the whole she's awful in her heel role, like she's miscast. I mean, they turned her heel because it was what made sense for the character, going back to what we said in the last question. And I think she's made the most out of it. She's been a better heel than I thought she would be. She's had good promos. I think she's improving on the mic, and that was always her biggest issue even a year ago when people were like, oh, she should be called up. And I'm like, her promos still need work, I think. And I'm not a professional wrestler, but just from a fan standpoint, I thought her biggest weakness is her promos. And I think she's improved that, like tenfold, at least in my opinion. So I think Roxanne's fine in her role. Lola as a babyface doesn't work. The heel versus heel dynamic didn't really work in the match. They told a good story, but the crowd was kind of quiet because Lola's not a babyface. And Roxanne's a good heel right now. So, yeah, that segment was awful. But you're right, the Britt and Mercedes segment was also great. Mercedes, you talk about people being in their element. She's a great bitch heel. Mercedes is always so much better as a heel. There were a lot of segments with Mercedes heading into her first couple of months in AEW, her first few months there, where she had some pretty fucking bad promos. This is what I'm talking about. Like, it's not always as if the AEW promos are so much better. A lot of those early Mercedes promos were not good in AEW, because her as a babyface is cringy as fuck. And it just doesn't really work. But as a heel, she's great. In the back and forth that she had with Britt, they had natural chemistry. What they had to say was good. The roles were great. Their segment last week wasn't as good, but their stuff 2 weeks ago was great. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the match. They got me excited for the match, and I think it'll be a good match. So yeah, the AEW one worked organically. The NXT one did not. You kind of answered your own question, but I agree with pretty much everything that you said for the most part. Your last question here, Stephanie Vaquer will be heading to NXT after 2 house show matches last weekend. And while there is a good portion of excitement from fans, there was a report of Stephanie canceling any other plans she had with AAA and CMLL before signing. The problem with this is that it caused online backlash from fans who called her a traitor or unprofessional for choosing WWE and walking out of her commitments with AAA and CMLL. Do you agree it was unprofessional the way that she walked away from AAA and CMLL? Do you find it hilarious how E-fans, I hate when people say that, E-fans, Fed fans, it's so cringy. Do you find it hilarious that WWE fans are going bonkers over her when they probably knew zilch about her before a match with Mercedes at Forbidden Door? And do you feel WWE too often gets a pass for basically lying about working with other promotions when all they do is steal their workers? There's a lot to unpack there. As far as the Stephanie Vaquer thing, no, that didn't really bother me. I don't give a fuck about AAA. I don't give a fuck about CMLL. I wasn't going to that show to see her. I didn't buy tickets to their shows to see her, and then she didn't show up, and then I was pissed about it. Me, personally, I don't really give a shit. Would it have been nice if they let her finish out her commitments? Yes, that would have been nice. But at the same time, she doesn't have to. Here's the thing that I think people are overlooking. It was reported even before WWE signed her, which, by the way, we were talking about Stephanie last week here on the show. It might have been you, Chris, that asked me where I think she'd be a better fit. And I said AEW would probably make the most sense because that was where she had exposure recently, but I could see WWE snatching her up. As soon as that was done recording, it's reported she's going to WWE. Like, they literally signed her by the end of the day, which was crazy. But anyway, it was reported before that CMLL, she had a contract with the company, but they have a history of letting people go if they want to leave. If they didn't want her to leave and they wanted her to stay through those shows, then they would have kept her. Or they would have said, listen, we're not going to let you go to WWE. We're going to have you work these shows, and then we'll have you leave. Clearly, that company didn't give a fuck. They were willing to be like, hey, you can go whenever you want. Like, that's a big opportunity, and WWE didn't just want to get her, just as quickly as possible. One, it was to prevent her from going to AEW. That is. I'm surprised they didn't mention that in your question, actually. WWE, if they didn't know about her before, they knew about her after Forbidden Door. So that's a fact. Did that match with Mercedes play a factor in why they signed her? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's the sole reason, but they definitely do sign some people to get them as quickly away from AEW as possible, so AEW does not sign them. That is a fact. But they also wanted her at their Mexico Live events last weekend because they were working Mexico last weekend. She was there. It was a big deal. They've been playing up her signing ever since. It was a big fucking deal. So I think she will shine there. That's not really the problem. But as far as fans going crazy for her, despite never really knowing who she is, I'm excited to see her in NXT based off of what I saw of her in AEW and at Forbidden Door. I'm one of those people that didn't even know who the fuck she was before the AEW stuff, before the Forbidden Door pay-per-view, before she started working with Mercedes. But after that match, I saw how good she was, and I'm like, yeah, I could see her in WWE. I could see her doing well there. But if she went to AEW, I would have been excited for her there too, because she's a good talent. She looks like a future star. So I don't really give a fuck where she ends up. I think in AEW she would have gotten a fair shot as well. But it seems like she went to WWE because, not that she has history there, but she grew up watching WWE. She always wanted to work for WWE. They probably have, maybe not better pay initially. I assume AEW probably would have given her a sweetheart deal to come in, especially with NXT. Like, if she's going to NXT first, she's probably not making that much, but she probably loved the idea of going to WWE and having a higher ceiling there overall than staying in AEW, or going to AEW. So, does WWE get a pass for lying about working with other promotions? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. They never worked with AAA. They were never working with CMLL. Will they take talent from TNA when Joe Hendry's contract is up? Yes, but TNA would probably want it no other way. TNA all the time will let their talent, and this is on that promotion. It's not on WWE. TNA, a lot of the times, will have people sign shorter contracts knowing that that person probably wants to work elsewhere. If they didn't want that, they wouldn't offer or they wouldn't do it. Nick Aldis went to TNA last year for a 6-month stint. Maybe not even. He was there for a couple of months. They did that on purpose because they knew the WWE offer was on the table for Aldis in WWE last year. They couldn't sign him when they wanted to. So we went back to TNA for a little while. If they weren't okay with that, with the idea of him going to WWE eventually, then they wouldn't have done that. They know their place. They know they are not on the same level as AEW and WWE. If AEW did that, different story. AEW has more restrictions, as does WWE. I don't think AEW would be like, yeah, you know what, we'll have you sign a year-long deal just in case WWE comes calling again. I mean, maybe. I think they have a lot of people sign multi-year deals. Like William Regal, for example, signed a multi-year deal, but they let him out early to go to WWE. They were nice about that because they wanted, Regal wanted to be with his son and whatever else, but typically they don't do that, and I don't blame them. They don't have to do that if they don't want to. AAA, CMLL, they probably realize for these performers who, they're a business, but they're not going to go out of business without Stephanie Vaquer there. TNA's not going to go out of business without Joe Hendry on their roster. They want what's best for the talent. I like that more than anything. It's not a pro WWE thing or a pro AEW thing, but if these promotions are like, hey, if you want to come in and you get a better offer to go somewhere else at some point, specifically one of the bigger promotions, we're not going to hold you back from that. That might have been the case years ago, but nowadays that's not really the case. And WWE currently is working with TNA, so I don't know what part of that they're fucking lying about, because they have their talent showing up on their show. They have the TNA talent showing up on the NXT show. Is it mutually beneficial? Yeah. We don't have to really go into specifics, but it's made me more interested in TNA. It's made me more interested in NXT. And for that alone, I think it's been a win-win deal. But WWE working with Noah, they had fucking EO work Marigold over the weekend. They had AJ Styles work Noah over the weekend. That is working with those promotions. Are they stealing their stars? Sometimes they do. Sure, Vince has done that in the past. Triple H would probably do it as well. They did it with Ring of Honor years ago. They never really worked with Ring of Honor, but they were stealing their talent at one point. Even while they were under contract, they were attempting to poach talent. They're not immune to that, but I don't know. I think I spoke my piece on your question, though. You're not entirely wrong, but a lot of that just doesn't really make sense. I don't think it was really unprofessional for Stephanie to walk away. Who gives a fuck? Were you watching AAA or CMLL? I mean, you probably didn't know much about her either, I would imagine. I'm not sure many people did, unless you watched those promotions. And maybe you did, I don't know, but who gives a shit? I mean, CMLL doesn't care, and they let her out of her deal. It's not as if she had a contract and then she went to WWE. That would be a fucking lawsuit waiting to happen. They let her out of that deal so she'd go to WWE. So if she doesn't really care, and maybe she did, maybe she would have wanted to drop the belt formally before she went in. But it was a timing thing. They wanted her for the Mexico house show. It's not like they signed her and then she's sitting at home for 6 months. They wanted her that weekend. She couldn't be working those shows, I don't think, as the CMLL Women's World Champion if she was under contract to a different company, if they don't have a fucking working relationship with CMLL. So it doesn't bother me. I don't really give a shit. At Iwagoo91, their first question was, besides the end of an era match, do you think that CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan at Over the Limit is the best WWE match of 2012? It is. I do think Triple H and Taker from Mania 28 is the best WWE match of that year, but the second best would be Punk and Danielson, same thing, I guess. Punk and Bryan from Over the Limit 2012, easily. From WWE anyway. Your second question, maybe I asked this before, but do you think that AJ Styles leaving TNA is the best move of his career? Yes, but it's a two-part answer. So not only did leaving TNA was that among his best decisions of his career, but leaving TNA and going to New Japan, that really revived his career and reminded people of how good AJ Styles is. He wasn't bad at the end of his TNA run, but when he left TNA, AJ has said this, he had no interest in WWE. WWE did not reach out to AJ Styles. It was a very different WWE back then in 2013 and 2014 and whatnot. They obviously wanted them in 2015, 2016. Triple H wanted them specifically. But I think what played a big factor in that was the renewed interest he got from working in New Japan when he became one of the biggest stars in the world. I mean, he was working in Ring of Honor in 2014. He had a great run there in 2015 as well. But it was really the New Japan stuff that really revived AJ's career. So had it not been for that, he probably would have left for a little while and then gone back to TNA in 2016. And that would have been pretty dumb because TNA was on its way out. They were losing a lot of money. They were losing network after network and all this other shit. They lost their identity, and TNA was in a rut for a good 5-6 years there, where the company was on the verge of being sold and no one even knew what the fuck was going on. That would have been a bad situation for AJ to be involved in because he was obviously better than that at that point in his career. He was ready for WWE. He had been for a very long time. But yeah, it was not only leaving TNA, because had he just left TNA and gone to Ring of Honor or something, he probably would have ended up in TNA. I don't know if WWE would have ever come calling, but it was leaving TNA to go to New Japan. Doing that was what really saved his career, I think. And that was the best move he could have made, because that was what led to him becoming a similar level of star in WWE. Had it not been for that, he may not have gotten as aggressive of a push, honestly, in WWE as he would years later. Your next question, where do you suppose Donovan Dijak will go? I could see him in AEW at some point. I really don't want him in Ring of Honor for the sake of being in Ring of Honor. I know he has history there. He's better than that. That show's like fucking AEW dark at this point. Like, who gives a shit about Ring of Honor? He could show up at their show next week in their pay-per-view, or this weekend, whatever the fuck it is. I don't really want to see that, but I guess he could. AEW would be nice if they had a plan for him. I'd like to see him in TNA. I think him in TNA would be cool because I feel like it's comical, obviously, because TNA's working with NXT right now, and he was in NXT the last time that we saw him, really. But I think in TNA he could become a big star. And TNA, yes, is a smaller pond, but it could prepare him to become a bigger star in AEW than if he just went there right now. So I think TNA would honestly be the best place for him. MLW would be fine. New Japan, him in New Japan would be cool. I'm thinking that we see him in TNA. I think he should go to TNA, if only for a little bit, and maybe that reminds WWE of what they let go of, or that causes, that sparks an interest from New Japan or AEW. I feel like that would be his best bet. But him just killing it on the indies for right now is totally fine too. He's actually going to be at Northeast Wrestling at the end of the month here in Connecticut on July 27th. He's facing Casey Navarro, which is going to be a great fucking match. But the whole show is going to be good. So if you're in the area, in Northeast area, Connecticut, I will be there. And hopefully you can go, because it's going to be a great show. And Donovan Dijak will be on the card. And at noob_n_co TV, Who is next to face Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship? Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, or Cora Jade? I would definitely go with Cora Jade for a face turn because Stephanie Vaquer just signed, or Julia will start chasing the Marigold World title. Cora Jade, I don't think she's... I know she teased being good now. I haven't heard anything. Maybe she did come back last night. I haven't finished NXT yet, so I don't know. I'm going to finish it after I'm done recording here. But yeah, I don't think it's Cora Jade. Cora Jade shouldn't be a babyface anyway. I know she has history with Roxanne, so you're just kind of reversing the roles. I would like to see them aligned, if anything, for a little bit as heels before one of them turns on the other. I would prefer to see that. It is too soon for Stephanie Vaquer. Julia, I don't think it's that soon for. I know you said, she might start chasing the Marigold World title. I had heard she might be on her way into WWE any day now. And they have what show? Their next show isn't until like September 1st, right? They have the Great American Bash, but that's a TV special. Other than that, they don't have to have Julia come in until next month. And the original idea, I think, was Julia for her to work Heatwave, according to Fightful anyway. That didn't happen, obviously, a couple weeks ago. That did not happen. But it would be cool to see her on, WWE in the next couple of weeks facing Roxanne. So maybe she did show up last night and I missed it. I don't know. I know she faced Thea Hale last night, or they built... I saw the segment with her and Thea Hale. I saw that. I don't know if they had the match last night or they're saving that for next week or at Great American Bash. I'm not sure. But Julia, to me, would be the next best bet because there's no one else in that division right now that feels ready for that spot. Stephanie, it would be too soon for. And Cora Jade, I just don't love that idea. Unless they were aligned. But her as a babyface, I don't know. I think Cora Jade is much better as a heel, in my opinion. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 555 of #AskGSM here today. July 17th, 2024, as I mentioned earlier. CM Punk Day, Money in the Bank 2011 anniversary. Going to have to go back and watch that match a little bit later on between Punk and Cena on the 13-year anniversary. But as always, guys, thank you so much for sending in your questions. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content, including sending in a question by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So like I said earlier, guys, hoping to do it either today or tomorrow, sometime this weekend. YouTube memberships will soon be open. I think for $5 a month. So that's too much or whatever, totally fine, but I would implore you to check it out and get exclusive content. So like I said, you might be getting a badge next to your name in the comments. I'll answer your questions first here on hashtag. I'll prioritize them to answer them first here on the show. We'll have our own channel members' comments if you send in a question to the show and whatnot. So you can do that. Archive content, getting videos early, like I mentioned. Occasional live streams, I want to bring those back. Do those on the... on the fucking, what's it called? On the channel, on the, for channel members and whatever. Exclusive Q&A stuff maybe at some point. And exclusive reviews. Like I said, if you give me a show to review or a match to review, a promo to review, regardless of what era it's from, what promotion, I will talk about it, do a whole video on it. And not just a YouTube short too. Like I'll do a whole 5-10 minute video, whatever, depending on what it is. We can bring back those retro reviews and maybe break down WWE in 2008 or something like that. I know a lot of you guys like that throwback shit, so if you want to see stuff like that, let me know and subscribe to the YouTube memberships when they go live pretty soon here on the channel. I want to try something out, something new, something cool, and I feel like that would be a good way to try it, so keep an eye out for that. Have a great one, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.